Would you believe it? It's episode 200, and it happens to be... Which one's more important? Either the Comedy Slab's 200th episode, which this is, or Her Majesty's 70th anniversary of accession to the throne.
Now, I don't want you to think I'm biased when I say this, but I would say the podcast one.
Correct, which is why we've had 2 bank holidays butted up against a weekend just to celebrate.
Yeah. It's been a bit of a disaster as a bank holiday, though, hasn't it? Don't you think? Because nobody knows. Is it a real bank holiday? Is it just a pretend one?
Well, I've been working today and yesterday, so it's not a real bank holiday. It's quite bizarre.
Although lots of people do work on a real bank holiday, don't they?
There is that. Anyway, so welcome to the Comedy Slab edition 200. No one thought we'd get to edition 20, never mind put another nought on the end. I'm Adrian Lacey in the southeast of England. So what do we do with this show? Yeah, what are we going to do with this show? Well, who knows where it goes from here, but the formula for the last 199 shows up to now, and probably applies to this one, is to take a different show each week, be it TV, radio, internet, podcast, whatever we're dissecting. We put it on the virtual slab of comedy, hence the title of the show, prod it about a bit, get our scalpel in, that's not a euphemism. At the end of the show, we will mark it individually out of 5, giving a collective out of 10 type thing, if we can do the maths. You can play along at home or wherever you are. So we will get to... We had to put a very special show on the slab for our very special big birthday of 200 episodes, and in honour of Her Majesty as well, of course. And we went for Monty Python, and not a film, but TV series. Series 1, episode 1. You really got to start at the ground floor, see what we made of it. And you've got some interesting takes on that. I nearly gave something away that we'll reveal a bit later. But we'll get to that in just a mo. Now, normally we'd have comedy news, but this is not a normal show. We are not normal people. Which would be a good title for a drama about teenagers in Ireland, but we'll put that to one side. You wanted me to do something different for the comedy news.
Well,
although actually it turns out there is some comedy news related to the different thing you want me to do.
Only because for 3 weeks now, you've been telling me about how you went to see Steve Coogan, and the only way I think I'm going to hear the story about what it was like is if you have to do it on the flaming podcast. That's what it was, really. It
had to be formally scheduled, didn't it? Had to be minuted. Yes, okay. Now, what picture does this conjure up? Because the wonderful Alison, my darling girlfriend, bought me a ticket to see Alan Partridge, the wonderfully... 2 tickets with her good self by my side. I wouldn't want it any other way, but the show's called... And immediately I smiled when she told me what the show was called. Do you know what this current tour is called?
I can't think it's... It's
like, right. You're allowed.
It's like a business jargon thing, isn't it? I can't remember which one it was.
Stratagem.
That's it, yeah.
So immediately you think, that's a very Alan Partridge word. The first thing it made me think of was his so-called podcast, which isn't, from the Oast House. There's a reference to him going to... You get a sense that it markets itself as an upmarket dating agency. Can you remember what that's called? It'll probably get you on the leave you on the dangling on this one as well. It's called echelon,
right?
Which I immediately loved. So it's a word like that. Echelon, stratagem, three syllables. There must be something in that for comedic value. So anyway, I smiled. But when she told me, tell me what picture this, or what association you have with this. Imagine your darling Angelina Ballerina, your wife, said, I've got 2 tickets to see Alan Partridge in Stratagem. You said, fantastic. What a wonderful present. Then she says, they're in the front row. What are you thinking immediately?
Are you mad?
I don't want to quite use that phrase.
Have you never been to a comedy show before? Are you mad?
Yeah. So what happens?
And with this face, I mean, that's the other thing I'd say. With this face and like no hair and the glasses, what do you think is going to happen?
Sitting target. Okay, cut to Brighton. I mean, that's the other thing. It was a perfect venue. Rather than be in is it the Royal Theatre in Brighton, which is beautiful, I think, probably.
Well, you see Comedia.
No, it was the conference centre where, I mean, you might think loads of jokes have been there before called politicians. I immediately think of particularly the Labour Party conference, but, they've all been there, haven't they, over time?
Yeah.
I don't know why our party conferences have to be at the seaside. It doesn't help us take them any more seriously.
It kind of fits in with the stratagem thing, though, doesn't it, as well?
Oh, no, that's what I meant, because
it's like
it's
a business
corporate.
Conference, isn't it?
Yeah. But there is this thing of being in the front row. Cut to about roughly 20 minutes into the show, he starts wandering off stage. Who does he go to first to pick on?
Got to be you.
It was me.
Got to be.
It was me.
Got to be.
But it's better than that. In this day and age, there's a huge screen behind him on stage and 2 screens at the side. So you've got 3 massive screens. He pokes in front of my face, if that's the right word, and shoves in front of my face at close proximity. I can do it to you on Skype, but I'll have to describe to our friends listening, an iPhone. And it is, of course, on video setting. So imagine this being that close to your face, by which I mean to 2 or 3 inches. What does that do to the picture on a wide-angle lens?
It distorts.
As if I haven't got a big enough schnozzle ready. So, and I was sitting there with a pint of lager, wild man of rock that I am, and he said, "Oh, gentleman over there nursing a pint," or something like that. He goes up to me, shoves the phone in my face on video setting, out of the corner of my eye, past my phone. I could just see, but I don't want to look. A 60-foot effigy of me at close range with a massive schnoz, even bigger than usual. And he said, "You, sir, you look like someone who takes a long time to answer a question." And I thought, please, God, let there not be a question just to demonstrate how long. Then he moves to Alison and said, "And you, madam, you look like you're angry with your life choices." At which point, I'm sure she looked at me as if I'm one of her life choices that she's angry about. So, a famous last. And he only went to one other person. So, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, as Meatloaf sang. What are the chances of that?
You just said, "Do you want me to podcast for
you?" Nice comedy callback. We'll let people Google it. But, I mean, blimey. What are the chances? So,
and what about the show? I mean, I do wonder if you've seen any of the other shows that he's done, like what is it, Steve Coogan as Alan Partridge and other less successful characters.
Was that in the 90s? I have seen him before, one man show, and he did Paul Calf.
And before that, when he was doing Paul Calf, he did the man that thinks he's it. Was Paul Calf and Duncan Thicket and those kind of things. What did you think of the show? Had it moved on?
I'm conflicted here, and I say this with a heavy heart, but I put the massive rider in up front, which is, if I critique Steve Coogan / Alan Partridge, I'm trying to do the hand gesticulations, indicating the top 10% of what's possible in comedy. So I'm critiquing that last 10%. I'm not critiquing the other 90, which he walks. But if I'm fussy, my recollection, and it's a 20-plus-year-old recollection of a show I enjoyed at the time, that to me seemed smoother, and I was more blown away by it. But still, he's got 90+% at Brighton. Big difference, and he's a more senior chap, as am I, and I can't learn lines to save my life, but for me, quite a big downer was he was reading off prompter when he was on stage. He went off prompter to talk to me. Seemed to manage without. He'd learnt those lines. Now, is that me being ultra fussy? Alison didn't notice, but because once you see it, you can't unsee it, as you often say.
Exactly,
and his eye line was constantly going down to the screens, the screens, which were at stage level.
A lot of the singers it's interesting. A lot of the singers that used to do residencies at the
Las Vegas
hotels and in Vegas, the hotels and the casinos and that, they started doing a thing where they put the words to songs were projected onto the back wall.
So at least that brings your eye line up.
So their heads up, but because of the whole audience is facing the other way, so nobody sees it, and there's all the words for them, kind of thing as well. So it's strange that they haven't done some of the kind of technology. I wonder if it's something because now, whether he has time to, with all the other commitments, he's got film, TV, radio, recordings, whatever else he's doing, whether he's writing as well. I think he's about to do a sitcom with Rob Brydon. I read
is
the
it?
other day.
Oh, brilliant news. Not more of the trip. Something else?
No, I don't think so. I think it's more of a sitcom,
right.
from what I could gather, but I only saw the headline. But I just wonder whether it's a time thing, whether he just doesn't have the time to commit because he's pulled in so many directions now.
Yeah, to which I'm afraid I would say, but...
don't do it.
I would say, don't fill your diary so much. So there's that, but... and the other thing is, again... top 10% I'm critiquing, so being ultra fussy, but the way I measure it, and I would have thought, I wouldn't mind betting Steve measures it the same way himself. I imagine every performer wants massive laughs, but you also want, at some point in the show, a big applause. Like, this is the crescendo.
The clever bit, yeah.
And there was some applause, but it felt like it came from a visual joke, and I felt it did. If it had been me performing, I wouldn't have felt it was quite earned in the same way that that you've built up to this absolute crescendo, and the applause is your reward, and that is your seal. It never quite took off in that way. Again, being very fussy, loads of laughs, loads of people went away. Everyone seemed to go away happy.
Yeah,
I thought I was going to get asked for my autograph. I was a bit unhappy I didn't, but apart from that,
nobody probably recognised you until they saw your face in a hubcap outside. Would they?
They said, "Are you the small-nosed guy?" Oh no, it can't be you.
Hang on, get a spoon. It's him. I told you it was him.
He's upside down.
Why does he look like a dolphin? You're right. I mean, and he is up there, and it does seem churlish, doesn't it, really, to be critiquing somebody of his stature in that sense. But I mean, I know I've seen some clips of the show that have been on the Baby Cow YouTube channel, and I saw some clips of it, and I thought, don't know, really. Don't know whether it's run its course in that format. But you see, but again, the Host House. I mean, I play and replay and listen to and think, I'll have a bit of Host House. That will cheer me up, because you can dip in and out of it. I just love the books as well. Nomad and I Partridge. They're just great to dip into.
Yeah.
So
funny you should mention Host House. I just read only today that he's going back to the Host House. So this is his podcast. He's got a second series. So he must be pleased. And it's been written by the same writers, Rob and Neil Gibbons. And it's Audible, isn't it? I'm trying to find...
It is, yes. Yeah, it is.
So we must get to the show proper, which is putting the material on the slab, a certain Monty Python troupe from, 1969, can you believe it? And... I suppose my first question to you has to be the classic question we ask at these times, which is, what was your feeling when I set that as homework for episode 200?
Yeah, it's a weird one because it's in a way I'm kind of going back to something that I know so well, and yet I don't know so well because I was 3 years old when the first series aired. I was 8 years old by the time the last episode of the last series aired. So. And I remember watching the last series. I do remember that quite vividly. I had an older brother. Well, still have got an older brother.
That's good.
But he's 7 years older than me, and so he was more attuned to the whole thing. So it was kind of in the household and all that sort of stuff. But it's weird because it's kind of like, I know Python, but then you think, I don't think I've ever watched series 1, episode 1. So a strange feeling, really.
And how many series did it go to? Do you recall in the end?
Is it? I can tell you because I've got them. Is it 4 or 5?
Sounds about right. I'll double check it while we're playing the clip.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's always good to have an older sibling, I think. That helps make you, the younger sibling, be a bit cooler. I certainly experienced that with an older sister.
I didn't have an older sibling. I only had an older brother, so...
You didn't sibble?
There was no sibbles in our household.
Mm-hmm.
4 series.
4 series.
Yeah, although some of the series went quite long, didn't they? So the first series went to 13 episodes.
Oh, did it?
Yeah. The second series.
Oh, they did in them days, didn't they?
Second series went to 13. Third series went to 13 as well, and the fourth only went to 6.
Oh. So, clip number 1, audio-wise. This doesn't come from the very top, but then in a sketch, it's sort of a sketch show, isn't it? Sketch format. Or perhaps you'll have a more detailed take on that a bit later, Shane, as to how you analyse it structurally. But so this isn't from the very top, but it's not quite the same as when we're doing a narrative show where we try and scene set. So the scene set, such as it is we've had 2 or 3 sketches before this one, and we're in a classroom. There is a running gag. I don't need to explain it here because actually you don't hear it in this audio clip, I don't think, but we'll get to that as well because that's quite interesting, and maybe that was part of the novelty of this show. So we are in a classroom. It turns out it's a night class, and I think we're going to find out from a certain Terry Jones, who's playing the teacher, what kind of night class it is.
Well, good evening everyone, and welcome to the second of our Italian language classes, in which we'll be helping you brush up your Italian. Now, last week we started at the beginning, and we learned the Italian for a spoon. Now, I wonder how many of you can remember what it was. Sit down, Mario. Giuseppe.
Il cucchiaio.
Ah, well done, Giuseppe. Or, as the Italians would say, molto bene, Giuseppe.
Grazie, signore. Grazie di tutta la sua gentilezza.
Yes. Well, now, this week, we're going to learn some useful phrases to help us open a conversation with an Italian. Now, first of all, try telling him where you come from. For example, I would say, sono inglese de Gerrard's Cross. I am an Englishman from Gerrard's Cross. Shall we all try that together?
Yeah. Sì.
Sono inglese dei Gerrard's Cross.
Not too bad. Now let's try with somebody else. Mr.
Mariolini, signor.
Mr. Mariolini. And where are you from?
Napoli, signor.
Oh, you're Italian.
Sì.
Well, in that case, you would say, sono italiano de Napoli.
And still the penny doesn't drop. I like the way he said Gerrard's Cross.
Yes. It's rather Porsche.
Yeah, it's quite nice. I was hoping and then maybe dreading that you were going to have the very first scene where Michael Palin is the bedraggled man coming out to the sea.
Is it Michael, actually? Checking that.
Yeah, it is, isn't
I
it?
thought it was Graham Chapman. But anyway,
No,
yeah,
Michael
that
Palin,
would have been hugely visual, and it has one word in it, which is...
It's
dot.
All you'd hear is the sea, isn't it, lapping on the shore? That was quite funny.
Well, that would have been surreal. That might have suited the show. But anyway, sorry, I should come to you for your succinct, we hope, tabloid headline.
Yes, my headline is, has Python's flying circus crash-landed on maiden flight?
Ooh.
Rocketeer. If you try that round here, we'll cut you. We'll slice your face.
A note of hesitation.
Yeah, I thought it really sketchy start. Really sketchy start. I mean,
Not
I know I've said
sketchy
this
in the sense that it's sketches.
not a sketch show. No, I know I've said this before about Only Fools and Horses, the first episode of that, and you kind of think you're not getting laughs in the places that you would 5, 6, 10 episodes down the road. You know, it's all very kind of heart in the mouth sort of thing. And this, I thought, was probably the worst I've ever seen for that. I was really kind of on tenterhooks by the time I'd got halfway through, because I'm thinking, is there an audience in there? Are they, you know? But then the quality wasn't great. I didn't think.
Technical quality, performance quality.
Yeah, no, well, not the performance. I thought was really quite solid and confident. I mean, I was kind of looking for Cleese, particularly. Seems. I mean, they'd all been working on the Frost Report, hadn't they? I think
course,
so.
Yeah.
They kind of knew TV anyway.
Yeah.
But Cleese looked really at home, particularly.
Yeah, I thought that.
But no, I just thought the writing was a bit. Oh dear! You know, there was the pig thing that was going on as a.
This is the running gag of a pig getting squashed, or numerous pigs getting squashed.
Yeah, and them crossing them off on a blackboard then, and But yeah, I don't. Well, go on. What
Well, can I will give my opinion and try and stop me, but just on the narrow point of the pig, as it were.
Yes.
And how that pertains to the writing. You said that immediately after saying you felt the writing was a bit, ropey or worse to that effect.
Yeah,
so how does the pig... Obviously, someone has to write on a script, a pig gets squashed, sound effect, pig being squashed.
Yes.
Someone crosses it off on a blackboard. What's the problem with that? Because that would have been quite novel for a sketch show, I think, in the late 60s.
I don't think... I think two things. It wasn't hugely funny in and of itself. And the second thing I thought that really hampered it was that the audience didn't kind of go with it at all. They didn't, at one point, I can't remember who, somebody sat down and they're supposed to have sat on a pig and cross another one off on the blackboard, and then a bit later on they gave an update of the score. Pig so many and
Pigs 3, Nelson 1, because Nelson fell out of a window.
He fell off a building, didn't he? Yeah. So, I don't know. I was kind of like really left a little bit a bit like the pigs, a bit deflated, really,
a bit squashed. Although they got the last laugh, but we don't want to ruin everything for someone who hasn't seen it before. And before I forget, the copyright. Now, this is an interesting one, and then I'll give my opinion. The copyright would normally be 99.999% times out of 100. That is percent, I suppose, out of 100. Would be BBC, particularly around that era.
Yes.
This is for the youngsters of today. This is long before independent production companies such as Steve Coogan's Baby Cow, Henry Norman, so on. But unusually and possibly uniquely, possibly the very first of its kind, I don't know for a fact, but it shocked me to learn that it was the Pythons retained the copyright. So it's Monty, open brackets, Python, close brackets, Productions, I think, 1969. Yeah. So their copyright.
Yeah.
So that to me suggests very canny, very ahead of their time. In terms of my view, mixed feeling. Some of it I thought felt very fresh, and I enjoyed the pig running gag. I didn't actually worry too much about the laughter. Cynics might say this is because I worked in the trade of sound and I knew how at various times, if there's a retake, it doesn't get such a big laugh. You might just move a laugh around, or as Richard Bryars once said, I remember in a Radio Times article about Good Life, he said, I think the BBC occasionally turn up the volume on the laughter.
Right.
Yeah. So read my lips. But also because it's so surreal, I think the problem is trying to possibly to have an audience at all. But, they weren't ready, I don't think, in 1969 to have a comedy without a live studio audience. Which is the norm, was the norm, and still, for a studio sitcom, that is part of the definition of a studio sitcom, to have a live audience. I found myself asking, in a way, a stupid question, so don't write in to tell me how silly it is. People might say comparing apples and oranges, or apples and forklift trucks, really. But are the Pythons as good as the Beatles?
I would say not, and for the simple reason that the Beatles' music doesn't seem to have dated, whereas the Pythons' comedy has, and I think inevitably it has. I'm not criticising it. I'm just saying that. I mean, you've got to bear in mind, like I said, I was 3 years old in 1969. There were 3 channels in this country. There were 3 channels in the United States, CBS, ABC and NBC. That's all they had over there as well. They've got like 5 million now or whatever it is. It's ridiculous. There was no on-demand. There was no streaming. There was no, it was a completely different, there were no mobile phones. It was a completely different time, wasn't it? So, of course it will date. But for some reason, the Beatles' music, I don't think has in that sense.
Well, okay, so that was going to be my next question. Why do you think, if it is the case, why do you think comedy doesn't date as well as music? And I'm asking myself the same question, of course.
Well, whenever I used to interview comedians, I always used to start from a point of view of feeling sorry for them, because if you're a musician And there's that wonderful sketch from, is it from Big Train? Where
Ralph McTell, is it?
Ralph McTell. And he said, I'm going to do a new one now. And somebody in the crowd goes, Streets of London. And he's going, I'm going to do a new song now. No, I'm going to do a new one. Streets of London. And then they get more and more rowdy, don't they? Go, Streets of London. Come on, Streets. All right, okay, I'll do Streets of London. So he plays that again. And he gets to the end of that. They come back to him a bit later and they go and say, right, I'm going to do a new one. I'm going to do Streets of London.
Yeah.
And with a musician, of course, that's all people want to hear. The hits, they want to hear things that they know. If a comedian did that, they'd be in real trouble, wouldn't they?
Well, actually, I'll give the counter example. I hear you, and for most of the time that would be true, except at the height of Rob Newman and David Baddiel, when they performed when they went stratospheric to, was it Wembley Arena, I think was the big gig, people wanted, and I interviewed Kevin Day, who was still is a comedian, but I put him in the past tense because I was going to say I associate him with the white heat of alternative comedy, as it was then known in the 80s. But he keeps busy and he writes for Have I Got News for You? Amazingly well connected, all of that. But he said his mates in the biz, other stand-up comics, thought they're going to bomb if they try and do old White House material. But actually, people wanted to go and say, we saw them do, you see that thing, that's you, that is.
That's you, that is, yeah.
But that is possibly one of the few exceptions.
But don't you think that was a product of things like the Fast Show, where we started to look more, we've been through Not the 9 O'Clock News. When you came to the Fast Show, it was more about catchphrase comedy. Harry Enfield, catchphrase comedy. And, people went to see Harry Enfield and they want him to say loads of money, or I do not believe you wanted to do that, did you? And that's because that's what the shows were. Catherine Tate is still doing that now and making a very successful career out of it. And some would argue doing it quite well. So, on the whole, when you're trying to do this kind of subversive, groundbreaking, and it was, wasn't it? Because you mentioned about it being a sketch show. I don't really know what it was, because each sketch they tried to link it into the next thing so that it kind of flowed, and it was like a narrative through the half an hour. So was it a sketch show? I don't know.
Sketch show plus, maybe. It's utterly unfair in the world of the arts, and maybe comedy's more unfair, as we're discussing, than the music, in that you come in on a crashing tidal wave of freshness, and then everyone moves to accommodate you, the other comedians, and then you look old hat because it looks like you're copying yourself, a bit like John Bonham sounds cliched as a rock drummer in Led Zeppelin, so there's a music crossover. When actually that was novel, and everyone copied him because it's so darn good.
Yes.
So you can't win in a way.
Yeah, contextually, you don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, do you? Or who's the chicken or who's the egg? Or the pig, indeed.
Are you the chicken?
Yeah.
I want to egg you on.
Yes.
Okay, well, you're...
the next one is about the funniest joke in the world, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
Oh, I'll save what I was going to say. I was going to say then, so...
Hold that thought.
Okay,
well, the funniest joke in the world, not that we quite hear it, or do we? The sketch is, well, actually, it's a composite sketch taking up 10 minutes, so fully a third of this Series 1, Episode 1 of Monty Python. And we join it as a very brave inspector, that's of police persuasion, goes into the house to try and retrieve the joke. I think we have a scene setter here with our man outside, a reporter who's interviewing the police inspector just before he goes in this very brave act.
I shall enter the house and attempt to remove the joke. I shall be aided by the sound of sombre music played on gramophone records, and also by the chanting of laments by the men of Q Division. The atmosphere thus created should protect me in the eventuality of me reading the joke.
there goes a brave man. Whether he comes out alive or not, this will surely be remembered as one of the most courageous and gallant acts in police history.
Sadly, it was not to be. It was just too funny for even the police to handle.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting, isn't it, in the modern age? I don't know whether you did this, but I could quite easily find the funniest joke in the world as to what it was. And in German, it was, wenn ist das Nunstück geht und Slottermeier? Ja, bei Hund das oder die Flipperwald gesput. Which actually translated means nothing at all.
Really? I thought there was a Hunt reference. I thought it was My Dog's Got No Nose.
No,
I kept hearing the word Slottermeier.
Yes.
Is that not even a proper word? I didn't learn German, unfortunately.
No, it isn't slotter. It isn't a word at all. It's what Baldrick would call gobbledygook.
Gobbledygook.
It basically translates as, when is the now peace git and Slottermeier? Yes, at hand, the Oder die Flippervolt gesput, because they're not real words. They're just sound.
But in German, I'm sure they fall about with that. Have you ever seen the Butler sketch they watch every Christmas religiously?
Yes.
It's excruciatingly unfunny. So, well, there's the thing. But that's very sensible, isn't it? I didn't even think to do a Google it search.
I think it's just quite interesting that, in the modern world, it is we would have stewed over that for months, and then maybe we'd have got the book at Christmas to see whether there was any mention in there or something like that. So you were much more on a string, weren't you? Whereas now you can kind of go, oh yes, I'm so sophisticated, I can find it, and there it is.
Well, I found myself making a list of targets that they were having a go at. The military obviously is one, and a large category generically, so not just military, but we had police, we had the teacher earlier. It's authority figures, isn't it, if you wanted a term for that?
Establishment, yeah.
Did you notice that, and did it, stick in the craw? Was it overdone, underdone? A lot of taking the mickey out of arts shows, as they were in those days.
Do you think that's because they were on BBC Two, and that was the staple of BBC Two?
I
so they
think
were kind
so.
of biting the hand that fed them.
And they all began with classical music. They all were just what we call talking heads, two people, a swivel chair each or something like that.
Yeah.
And but I mean, it was the pomposity that they were trying to puncture. And we had Picasso on a bike painting later on, and death, an awful lot about death as well.
I think they betrayed their class and their education in the Picasso on a bike sketch, because they started talking about all of these painters,
Mondrian and all of that.
But
they had a working class woman correct him. So it's not Picasso, it's Mondrian.
Yeah,
but it made me think of Pete and Dud in the gallery.
Yeah.
But I wondered which came first. I think that would have been first, wouldn't it? So 1 or 2 years perhaps before 69.
I don't know. It'd be a close call, that one. That'd be a close call between. Yeah. The interesting thing, I think, as well, is that they're coming off the back of the Frost Report, and probably that was the week that was before that. And what was the 1958?
Oh, at last the
show,
1948 show.
48 show or something.
Radio show, wasn't it?
Yeah, and all those kind of things which were groundbreaking. That the thing to be was anti-establishment, groundbreaking. So in a way, it reminds me of when my brother grew his hair long so that he could be different.
Yeah.
And so and then he used to go and hang out with all the other guys who'd grown their hair long, who all like status quo as well, so they could all be different together.
So they were, or as you might call it, identical.
It's that kind. I do wonder whether in the landscape, whether people just thought, oh, here we go again. This is another. Particularly the older generations. I do wonder how the older generation would have perceived them, particularly poking fun at war, which had come at a great cost to a lot of that generation.
Yeah, although that leads us, by the way, Pete and Dud, 1965, I forgot, of course, it's black and white, so that's a bit of a clue.
Right, yeah.
Although BBC One was black and white for longer than
so
BBC
well
Two
before,
came in. Yeah.
Well before Python then, yeah.
Yeah. So they got in first. But, the Goon Show, they were, I was going to say anti-military, but not necessarily anti-military per se, but they were poking fun at it because they'd been through it. And, war's got plenty of absurdities. Catch-22 satirises some of them. I nearly said the MASH report. The show MASH, of course, came at it from a different angle, sort of tragicomic, I think. So interesting. So you can see some influences. You can see, of course, it's very much of its time. Very hard not to be of your time, but you also want to try and be simultaneously a little bit ahead of your time. I think they were, but you can't stay ahead of your time 50 years on necessarily.
I think they ended up being a curse to comedy as much as a blessing, because then when the guys got together for Not the 9 O'Clock News, for example, everybody said, "Oh, here it is, it's Python all over again," or Python for a new age, or for a new era. Which, is that a bad thing, or is that something that you should aspire to? I don't know. I mean, you could take that either way, couldn't you?
Yes, but arguably more difficult in a pre-YouTube age where the myth, the juggernaut that was Monty Python, would have built up so big that you just couldn't beat it, could you? You were going to get run over by it, however good you were. Yeah. And then if people went back as we're going back, you might think, oh, actually, am I misremembering slightly?
Here's the $64,000 question. Okay?
I'll have the money. Oh.
All right. It's significantly less than $64,000. I can tell you that for nothing. Here's the question, right? I am a Python, and you are commissioning editor. Give me a second series, you swine. You're commissioning editor for BBC Two. Mm-hmm. Okay, and we've just sat in the screening room and watched that. Would you commission the whole series based on that? I think that's the question.
But am I in 1969 to ask an ancillary question? I assume I am.
Yeah, I suppose you've got to be, haven't you?
I've got to think what else is around at that time. And I think there won't be anything quite like it, although you'll see the Goon Show parallels and so on.
Yeah, comedies of 1969. Let me just
thank you. I was hoping my glamorous assistant would help me out there.
What is on the TV? Oh, I should have put TV comedy. Hang on, all the films.
It should be at the foot of Wikipedia with a bit of luck.
In loving memory, Dear Mother, Love Albert, Joker's Wild, On the Buses, Says Les.
I hate you, Butler. Okay. Well, I think that, wasn't it like music, to come back to that parallel, that there's quite a big gap between, Engelbert Humperdinck and the Beatles and your On the Buses and classic sitcoms and Monty Python. I think I would commission it. Because I think it's sufficiently different from sketch shows in having this running gag, the squashing pig, and one or two other running gags, and also, I think it might have been overdone, but I still like their chutzpah, the cheek, the risk-taking of having a third of your show one sketch. That can't have been done before.
No.
And yet it was subdivided, so it's still counted as sketchy. It has to be that time where we ask you your score out of 5, and I've got a feeling it's not going to be overly generous.
I don't know whether you would say overly generous or not. I mean, I can only, and these are the rules. These are the rules that we only mark on that episode, don't we? I mean, that's what we've done with everybody else. So it's no good going, oh yeah, I love Monty Python and all of it. That doesn't. No. So just going on that episode, I give it a 3.5.
Okay.
And the half is for the bravado of it. I nearly gave it a 3. But as I say, the confidence with which it was delivered kind of helped to waylay any fears. But yeah, 3.5 from me.
Well, here's a strange thing.
Yes. Oh,
I believe I'm going.
I'd wash your hands after handling that, to be honest with you, but go on.
I believe I've got to go for a 3.5 too.
Oh, wow.
And I'm close to going for a 4, and then I think, did I laugh out loud? Was I really entertained? Was it more a historical study? Certainly enjoyable.
Yes, it wasn't unenjoyable, was it?
No.
It wasn't a trial, was it? I didn't look at my watch thinking, "Oh, was there much more of this?"
No. I tell you what, we haven't even touched on the animations. I'm going to elevate it to a 4 because I thought the animations elevated it. And that would have been another thing definitely different from studio-based comedies and your average sketch show. So 4 from me, 3.5 from you, 7.5 out of 10 for Monty Python.
Not bad. Not bad. Still very
Not too
respectable
grubby.
from something from 1969. I suppose you want your homework for next week now, don't
I
you?
suppose I do. It's 2001. Oh, no, 201 next week.
Well, I thought we've gone old school BBC. So why not go new school BBC? Something that's just been shown on BBC One, I think. I lose track, when with this all on-demand stuff, I lose track of where these things are. But it's got some of my favourites in there, so I thought, well, why not? Let's give it a go. It's written by Tom Basden.
I think I know where you're going because I was going to put it on the slab next week.
It stars Jim Howick, who was the guy that in Ghost. You remember the guy who was the scout leader in Ghost? The guy who had the
We are
arrow
talking
through
about the
his
same
neck?
show. It's got a sort of catchphrasey type name, but I can't remember. It's like we are something or the.
Yeah, you're close. You're close. And Alison
can't
Steadman, I just wanted to mention as well, who's in it.
Oh yeah. But she's in every comedy. You don't get a commission without her in it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Bless her.
It's called Here We Go.
Here we go, indeed.
Here we go. And I think that stems out of the fact that it's the story of a family, but it's captured by, I think, one of the younger members of the family having a video camera. And so every time they go to say, right, here we go, we're recording kind of thing, here we go.
Catchphrase.
So I thought, well, series 1, episode 1, find out what it's all about. Tom Basden, I like his writing. He's in it as well, and I never tire of watching him in stuff. And the rest of the cast seemed great as well, so I thought we'd do that for next week.
Are we going in at the ground floor?
1-1.
1-1. Okay.
1-1. Testing, 1-1.
And that's on BBC iPlayer, I happen to know. In fact, all episodes are if you really wanted to swat.
Yeah.
But we're not allowed to judge anything other than 1-1. Fantastic. Okay, well, let's park it there. Here's to the next 200 episodes. Can we last the course? This is virtually a life partnership.
I'm not talking about what it's like to listen to, because that is something completely different. But to do, I mean, it is. I mean, despite the fact that it is quite a lot of work, it makes me laugh. I mean, when people say, "Oh, there's no," it's easy, isn't it, to just to criticise other people's work? There's nothing in that, and you kind of think you have no idea the work that goes into putting this together.
Oh,
but
exactly.
it's not a chore. Well, it hasn't been for me. I don't know about you.
No. There are laughs aplenty, and yeah. I mean, I wish I could devote more time to it actually, but no, it's been a hoot. And I mean, in no parallel universe would I have predicted 200 episodes.
200, no. But I think so. I don't think you're really kind of out there when you say here's to the next 200, because as long as we can manage to get together and chat about something that we both feel really passionate about, we really love. And isn't it so much nice? I mean, we were doing a podcast before this where we were talking about news and current affairs and all that sort of stuff, and it kind of, I found it kind of got really quite depressing.
Yes.
To be in that cycle, that news cycle, which, in fairness, kind of both of us had been in and out of in the previous 15 years, and to do something like this, it's such a release that you kind of think, oh, it's just talking about stuff that we like. It's great. So yeah, maybe another 200.
As long as I don't get squashed by a pig.
Yeah, as long as you stop looking like your reflection in a spoon, that's the only thing, You'd be. I mean, come on, it's all right for you, but for me, it's like working. It's like I'm John Entwistle. It's like working with Pete Townsend, isn't it? Look at that bugle coming round the corner.
You having a go at my schnoz? Have at you, sir.